Hi, and welcome back to Perspectives. In this lecture, we're going to discuss the legal elements of a crime as well as criminal responsibility. Let's get started. Substantive criminal law describes which acts constitute crime and specifies the punishment for those acts. Corpus delicti literally means the body of crime. It's a legal principle that holds that a crime must be proved to have occurred before a person can be convicted of committing that crime. That is, a person cannot be tried for a crime unless it can be first proven that a criminal law has been violated and a person is criminally responsible for that violation. There are 7 principles of substantive criminal law. These include legality, the criminal act or actus reus, mens rea, causation, harm, concurrence, and punishment. Think of these as the criteria that needs to be met beyond a reasonable doubt to convict a defendant. Let's look at each. The first principle is legality. A law defining the behavior as a crime must exist at the time the crime was committed. Behavior that we may find reprehensible, but has not yet been defined as a crime, cannot be prosecuted and punished. That is, we cannot make a law in hindsight and then apply it to behaviors that happened before the law was created. That's what we would call ex post facto, and it's specifically forbidden by the U.S. Constitution. The next principle, the criminal act or actus reus, meaning the guilty act, says that there has to be an act of commission or omission. Your thoughts alone are not sufficient enough to constitute a crime. However, though, in some circumstances, speech can constitute a crime, even though there's no specific physical action, something such as terroristic threats like "I'm going to kill you." Status cannot be a crime, so just being poor or homeless or addicted to drugs is not enough. The next principle, a guilty mind or mens rea, refers to a person's mental state at the time the act was committed. It requires an intention to commit an act. This is your guilty mind. Now, there are 4 levels of mens rea. An act can be purposeful, knowing, reckless, or even negligent. And we treat these levels of intent very differently in the criminal justice system. It's important to note, though, that mens rea is not the same as motive. The principle of causation suggests that there must be a relationship between the crime and the harm suffered. I once saw an example in an introduction to criminal justice text that was really good. It was talking about a prosecutor attempts to charge a burglary suspect with manslaughter when a victim, possibly the homeowner, was killed by a stray bullet from the police. The police were firing at the suspect who was unarmed and fleeing. Because burglary itself was not the direct cause of the victim's death, the prosecutor would actually be unable to levy this charge against the burglary suspect, even though a death had occurred. The principle of harm suggests that there must be actual or potential damage inflicted on a legally protected value. So typically we take this to mean a person, a property, or a reputation. Now, there is such thing as an inchoate offense. This is criminal behavior even though harm has not been done. So maybe an attempt or a conspiracy. Or what if I decided to hire a hitman to kill my husband? Right? So even though maybe it's the hitman's an undercover police officer and nothing ever happens to my husband, he was never in any danger, it would still be illegal for me to attempt to hire the hitman. The principle of concurrence suggests that intention, mens rea, and the act, actus reus, must occur at the same time. Let's keep with our example of killing my husband. Let's say I plan to kill my husband on Thursday, but I accidentally run him over with my car on Tuesday and he dies. I am actually not guilty of murder, even though I planned or intended to kill him on Thursday, because I accidentally ran over him on Tuesday does not constitute murder. The last principle, punishment, says that there must be a stipulation in the law for sanctions to be applied. I remember when I was in my young 20s, there was a big hot issue about burning the American flag, and many politicians actually campaigned on passing a constitutional amendment against flag burning or making flag burning a crime. Well, interestingly enough, flag burning is protected by your First Amendment right. Well, some politicians, they got elected largely on their ability to pass a law that made flag burning and burning the American flag a crime. Well, if it's against the Constitution, how was this possible? Well, they simply wrote a criminal code that made burning the American flag illegal, but they didn't stipulate a punishment attached to it. So there's no sanction to be applied. So in order to be prosecuted, found guilty, and then sentenced for a crime, punishment has to be attached. Okay, let's talk about the elements of a crime. A crime is composed of three elements: the act, or actus reus, the intent to commit the act, mens rea, with causation and concurrence, and attendant circumstances. In criminal law, attendant circumstances are additional facts that define a crime and are required to be proven in the definition of the offense. They're also known as external circumstances. Attendant circumstances are specifically written in statutory codes and must be present when the crime is committed. Attendant circumstances can include the crime's methodology, the location or setting, victim characteristics, and maybe the perpetrator's motive or intent. Attendant circumstances plays a role in determining the severity of the crime, in establishing jurisdiction, negating any justification or statute of limitation defense. For example, in a statutory rape case, the victim's age would be an attendant circumstance. In a car accident case, attendant circumstances might include the weather conditions, the speed of the vehicles, the condition of the road. Lastly, I wanted to give you an exception to the rule: strict liability and mens rea. Strict liability offenses are a special category of crimes that require no culpable mental state. The purpose of these absolute liability offenses is to protect the public. Some examples might include traffic laws, narcotic laws, or health and safety regulations. Okay, thanks for joining me. As always, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.